feeling stable, I feel able to turn the tables. I could do this, just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like sort of.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Philip J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
You guys know what to do, just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? I hope you guys had a fantastic week. Welcome. It's Friday. Welcome back to the DT Show. Tonight, we're going to be getting back into the Nancy Guthrie disappearance. Chief Nanos out there in Arizona has revealed some information that I guess that, in my opinion, I think that we can kind of deduce some more, maybe a little bit more of what it is that law enforcement has and doesn't have. What is the direction in which that they're going? I think there's quite a bit of clues to be seen. And so here we are. Welcome to the show. And hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. I know some guys haven't been getting the notification. So if you're watching this on the replay, you didn't get notified, just unsubscribe, resubscribe, make sure that the notification bell is rung, and that'll help. Also, hit the like button. That way it tells YouTube that you like myself, the content that's coming out of this channel, and that way it'll also give you the notification, because YouTube's only going to give you a notification for the shows that you do like. So if you're not liking this one, then you're not going to get notified. So would appreciate if you guys do that. And without further ado, let's get into the content. So Chief Nanos spoke with the media here recently, talked a little bit about the Nancy Guthrie disappearance and some of the information that they may have. I have part of that interview, and I have a couple of articles that we're going to look into that kind of, I've been kind of leaning a certain direction with this case, and I think I'm actually kind of right on it and spot on. So I'll give you guys my synopsis on everything and my opinions. So let's break it down. Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with what Chief Nanos said, and then I'll pull up some articles. I haven't really read through them yet. I just kind of saw the title, so I'm assuming some of the information that are coming in. I think one of them I did read. And so let's break it down. Let's get into it.
Tonight, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos giving an update on the search for Nancy Guthrie nearly 6 weeks since her disappearance.
Do you think that this suspect could strike again, whoever did this?
Well, absolutely. We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that.
All right. So right off the bat, now, first and foremost, when it comes to these type of interviews and things of that nature, we have to come in with the context of knowing that very much so that this is edited, and possibly even if we've watched the full interview that was aired, it's most likely edited and maybe even out of order. But what does he say here? He says that they believe that it's targeted, and that they believe that this person could strike again. Could strike again is interesting, because that means that this isn't somebody who's targeting her for her inheritance money or things of that nature. This is maybe perhaps, and I've said this multiple times, that this is, in my opinion, a fantasy-driven crime. I think that's the aspect when it comes back to this guy could strike again. I didn't think this was the guy's first time doing, maybe the abduction aspect. Maybe this is the first time, but I don't think this is the first time this person's made entry into somebody's house. And I, for one, I ain't underestimating this guy. This guy's committed this crime. There's images of him, so we know exactly what time he is at Miss Guthrie's location. We know exactly what time Miss Guthrie, her pacemaker disconnected from the telephone, and yet it doesn't appear that law enforcement have a suspect vehicle in mind. They've taken in a couple of vehicles. They've interviewed, and detained several suspects, but all of them have been cleared. And so, now there's these thoughts and possibilities there of a radio jammer now, or a Wi-Fi jammer of some sort. That doesn't sound like an amateur to me. That doesn't sound like somebody doing this off of a whim, etc. Now, I know a lot of people are looking at his get up, and a lot of people are looking at maybe perhaps the type of holster he used and the location that he put it in. But think about it from a different perspective. If this is an intelligent person, he's not going to go and buy a holster at a store that's going to fit his weapon that he has in the front of his crotch area, right? Because then that's going to lead back to him. You're going to find something secondhand, and sometimes when you're finding things secondhand, you may not be able to utilize the exact same holster that you would like. The positioning of the gun. I think anybody who's ever seen a movie that where somebody's carrying a gun, unless it's like, a gangster movie where they have it tucked into the back of their waist or in the front, tucked in underneath their pants. I don't think anybody's ever seen that. So that should tell you something about the guy positioning the gun in front of his crotch. He has the shirt tucked in behind it. In my opinion, that's because he wants everybody to see the gun. Now, interesting thing, and let me pull this up. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit because this is the one thing that I did see, and it happened to do with the cameras that were at the Guthrie residence. So images, feds recover more images from home security cams. It says here the FBI has some new information to pour over in the Nancy Guthrie case because feds have been able to recover more images from the surveillance cameras for her home. According to ABC News, the feds recovered thumbnail images from Nancy's motion-activated camera that were pointed at her swimming pool, backyard, and side yard. The report says images show several people in the backyard, side yard, and they are from before Nancy's abduction and shortly after, including law enforcement response. So it's capturing people going back and forth, but it doesn't capture the suspect during the time, or it doesn't capture anything. From what it sounds like, during the time that the suspect is seen there. So what does that mean? What does that say? That says he probably did have a jammer. Now, in my opinion, why is he so clear in the first image of the house, or when he's coming up from the door, the doorbell camera? I've been telling you guys, he wanted to be seen. I think he had a jammer, and I think he turned it off. I think he wanted to be seen. He wanted not just Nancy Guthrie to see the gun, the mask, his getup. He wanted, in my opinion, Savannah Guthrie to see him. And I think he's accomplished that. Everybody's seen him. Everybody knows what the getup was. Everybody knows what the positioning of the gun was. Everybody knows, the mask, the backpack, the gloves. And you don't do those type of things, right, if your intention is to get away. I mean, yeah, I think maybe this guy's some sort of narcissist, and maybe he thinks he can show off, show his face, sort of, or his eyes, his mouth, his get up, his height, and his weight, and not get caught. Now, there's another image of him in the front without the backpack. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking that that's a different time because it looks darker, etc. It could be a lot of those things. Sometimes, though, when a camera at night turns on and it adjusts, it's not. Sometimes it comes on darker and then it lines up and then goes darker. Sometimes those things can happen. Me personally, I think that it was the same night. I know some people are speculating that it might be a month earlier. I don't think so because of the plants. The plants there, the bigger plants, their appendages, leaves, whatever you want to call them, they're in the exact same position. And the sun pattern in January is slightly different than the sun pattern in February. And so I would just assume that it wouldn't be exactly the same. I would think that the leaves and the branches would have moved slightly to adjust for the slight change in the sun pattern, right? And so for me, I think it's the same night, but why is it capturing him again? Maybe perhaps he left the door jammer or the Wi-Fi jammer near the backyard, so that way maybe his maybe he was more concerned about being captured going into the house than being seen in the front. And again, I think that he wanted to be captured on camera. I think he wanted to be seen there. And so, and if he had some sort of jammer on him, this is a level of premeditation and thought, forethought, and probably calculation than many of the crimes that we've covered here. If that ends up being the case, I suspect it to be. That's why I think the plants in the front of the house weren't necessarily used to, I don't know, maybe they were used to shield the camera so that you couldn't see his getaway, so to speak. But I think they were going to be used, as a place to hold the flowers there, sort of a message, so to speak. So, and the reason I believe that is because if you look at the majority of the plants that are on the ground, the only one that looks stripped is the one in the direct path of where somebody would step on. And we can assume that when he's fiddling with the flowers and things of that nature on the doorbells before he made entry. And so he must have left them on the ground and then exited afterwards and perhaps stepped on them, either himself or Nancy or both, as they exited. Don't forget, there was also blood nearby. She may have fallen on top of them. I strongly suspect that she was close to the ground when those blood drops were created. Interesting, the cameras did not capture anything the night of the abduction other than what the FBI has already released, showing a masked suspect with a backpack. ABC News says sources told them there's nothing suspicious about the new images. Nancy's been missing for an ongoing of 6 weeks now. And there's actually some footage of these burglars who are utilizing a jammer. I wish I would have brought it up. And they have a stuffed backpack that they have to use with them to manipulate the camera system. Now, this doesn't show anything. And not to mention, if this was strong enough to knock out the maybe cameras that could have captured the vehicle leaving from the neighborhood, then the crooks that I had seen that were utilizing this type of jammer, the Wi-Fi jammer, so that way they can manipulate the camera system in these burglaries that they were doing, they had to get kind of close. You could see them from a distance walking up to the cameras. According to this document, there was nothing captured. And in fact, the neighbors have also indicated that they had some malfunctions during the time in which that Miss Guthrie was taken. And this, obviously they're not right there. They're a little bit further away. Now, we may not know about the front doorbell camera because that may have been already taken off and broken. And so we may not be able to see if something kooky went on with that. But if the neighbors started having issues and they're not, necessarily pretty close, that must tell you that this, the technology is probably a lot more advanced than what I had seen from the burglars that were going into these high-profile houses to steal things. All right, so a level of knowledge would be required, in my opinion. And if they weren't flowers and they were weeds, at the end of the day, they were plants, right? Let's see. The Pima County Sheriff's Department issued a news statement Friday saying that they continue to analyze various forms of evidence in the Nancy Guthrie case. Because, technically, dandelions are considered weeds, right? And some people hand those out as flowers. So take that for what it is. Including material laboratories as well as images and videos captured by cameras, PCSD ads. At this time, we will not comment on the details of the status of the analysis. So I just wanted to bring up this article to when it comes to what he is saying here and about the evidence there and their motives and their thoughts. They didn't think that this was ever a burglary, meaning that not much was taken. Now, I I haven't seen it myself, but I had heard that Lena from Truth and Transparency had met with Carlos, one of the guys who had gotten detained, and she was able to get the search warrant from him. And in that search warrant, supposedly, law enforcement was looking for medication from Ms. Guthrie, which would make one believe that maybe perhaps the suspect took the medication with him. And again, and I've said this multiple times, for somebody to take that kind of medication with him to keep her alive is, to me, an indication that the intention of them going there was to abduct her. You don't go in there and then something bad happens. Like, let's say it's a burglary gone wrong. She scratches him, or she recognizes him and is able to identify him, and he feels the need that he needs to take her. This wasn't a planned abduction. This was a planned burglary. And now things have changed and he needs to take her. I don't think in that moment somebody's going to be like, oh, you know what? Let me make sure that I got all her medicines to keep her alive. I don't think that's the thought process when you have something like a burglary gone wrong. You've been identified. You can be identified. Let's just say you got scratched and she has DNA on her fingernails, and now you're panicking and you're being desperate to the point where you have to now abduct her. During all that commotion and that chaos, to think, all right, let me go back and take her medicine to make sure that she stays alive for the next few days or whatever the case may be. It just doesn't jive with me. That doesn't make any sense. And so, and I mean, you can think he's an idiot. And I'm assuming you're thinking he's like, do, and try this. I'm not sure who you're referring to. Let's see. What did Mount Mama say? That was a good point. Let's continue to hear what Sheriff Nanos said.
And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe. No, keep your wits about you.
We pressed Nanos about that potential motive.
There is something that's come out in the investigation that gives you a sense of motive here and why this person did this?
I think it's come out from day one. I think from day one, we had some strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished.
So, it came out since day one. Well, the ransom stuff didn't come out day one. That came out day 3. So I don't think any of that stuff had anything to do with it. Plus, there's been a lot of stuff that's been out there, in Savannah's, reporting history that, somebody could go through and pick apart things. Nancy has been a part of the Today Show multiple times, has brought in the cameras into her home and things of that nature. Given 3 days, I guarantee you, if I had 3 days, I could find a lot of things about a lot of people off the interweb that could potentially make somebody believe that I have information that I shouldn't have. And so I've never once believed that was the issue, but they think that it was a targeted attack, a targeted abduction. And I agree with them. I think that the motive here was to abduct her and to take her. Now, why? I don't think he knows, to be honest with you at this point. But, I think it would be hard to say with 100% certainty without a suspect why.
Do you believe it was a burglary gone wrong?
I'm not going to get into those theories. We have our beliefs. Everybody else has theirs.
Now, I don't like that response. We have our beliefs. Everybody else has theirs. That's kind of like, when you get into it with one of these folks who doesn't have all the information, don't have all the evidence. And then they're like, hey, that's my opinion. That's my belief. You have your right to yours. And that's because we don't have all the information. We don't have all the evidence. This guy supposedly does. So, I mean, I would say, I wouldn't go into that, oh, they have theirs. I would just say, hey, and this is me Monday morning quarterbacking our armchair detective, being an armchair detective at this point, but just kind of saying, hey, we have some information, we have some evidence that make us believe in the direction that we do, and we're going to follow the evidence in the direction that it leads us. And that's basically all you have to say. Adding, you have your beliefs, we have our beliefs, kind of leads to an indication of uncertainty, in my opinion. Does that make sense? What do you guys think about that? And what do you guys think about Chief Nanos' approach to this up to this point, or his job so far in this investigation. I know he's gone under a lot of criticism. I'm not too thrilled with the job that he's done, to be 110% honest with you. I'm not going to be, completely harsh on the guy and throw him under the bus either, but I do think there's a lot of things that could have been done better. 1,000%.
Nanos says he's intentionally withholding their theory and other details in the case.
They're withholding some of their theory, but he's been open about it being an abduction and a targeted abduction since the beginning. So he's not, for him to just say, oh, no, we're going to keep it a secret now. It seems kind of like, why? Like, you're making yourself look bad.
Citing the integrity of the investigation. He confirmed investigators have been asking about potential internet issues the night of Nancy's abduction and said they're looking into the possibility a Wi-Fi jammer could have been used or if there was some other electrical disruption that night. The sheriff also says he's still hopeful the DNA found in the home will lead to the suspect. Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
So there's a possibility of the jammer that we've talked about multiple times tonight. I strongly suspect that may have been what is sticking out of his bag, his pocket, which if he's not getting jammed or the video's not getting jammed when he's walking up there is because he didn't want it to be jammed. He wanted to be seen. That's why he looks down with the light. He's aware. If he thought that jammer was on, he wouldn't be looking down when he's walking up, turning on the light. He wouldn't be covering his face, the way he's doing it. If he thought that the jammer was working, he knew it was off. He wanted to be seen. I still say this is an inside job, especially when they have taken the medication. I mean, could be. The only thing with the whole inside job or family, whatnot, which is one, they've all been clear, which means that they've all turned over their phones. I think they've all done extensive, cooperation with law enforcement. Like, yeah, you can have a red flag, but at a certain point, once you've looked at enough evidence, you got to get off of it, right? Like, you can have somebody who's got a red flag, but if he has an alibi, you can prove exactly where he was at that moment, that this person's on camera. I mean, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? And if you have their communication devices and you have the routers and you have a bunch of things, their financial records and things of that nature, because if they're purchasing burner phones or minutes or all these things, those things are very simple to find. That's why when it comes to this scenario, I said it from the get-go, and I said this in the Brian Koberger case as well. And I got a lot of flack then too in the beginning because I was saying, I don't think it's Jack DeCore. I don't think it's the bartender. I don't think it's, somebody that they knew. I don't think it's this guy, at the food truck place. This is somebody outside of the circle. Why? Because that was a gruesome crime with a lot of cameras nearby. And there are certain things that have to happen for somebody to go commit a crime. For one, they got to leave their home. They got to return back to their home. And how many cameras and how many, identifying, pieces of evidence can you find on that path? Like with Brian Koberger, even in the most desolate of area, there are clips of his car traveling down the road and going into Pullman at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so, and they have video of him leaving and getting into Moscow, passing by the, was it the cannabis shop? So if you have an idea of who your suspect is, then just trace your steps backwards. Get the financial records, get all this stuff, find out where they were, get their phone, GPS, see if you can determine whether or not they were on their phone, whether or not they moved, whether or not he got up in the middle of the night to go, to go urinate. There's a lot of things that you can figure out with technology and phones. I mean, if you go look at the Alex Murdaugh case, they were able to determine whether his phone was in landscape or in portrait mode, or if it was sideways or upward in the position of his vehicle. And so I'm fairly positive the FBI, especially involved in a case like this, is going to be able to, if they had an idea of their suspect, I would feel very confident that they would have been able to build a case against that person within a matter of 10 days. And that's really pushing it. That's really pushing it. If they have a suspect. Brian Koberger, they figured him out on December 19th. They arrested him December 31st. But like 7 days of that was them trying to locate where he was because he had traveled across town. They had no evidence against him when his name came up outside of the DNA on the knife sheath. And the only thing that came out of it was the IGG. They still had to build a case against him. And they built one and got him arrested within, from the time that they pulled into Pullman on the 24th of December to the 31st was what, a week? 7 days? Is what it took him from the time that they located him to put him in bracelets. And he was a PhD professor, PhD student, teacher, whatever you want to call him, out of in criminology, studied under Catherine Ramsland, and yet he couldn't. Once they got his name and all the effort that he put into trying to hide his involvement in the crime, he couldn't do enough. So I highly doubt that Tommaso or Annie or somebody else that's close to the, to Nancy that people have suspected are going to be able to, overcome that. Just me. And I say interwebs. I love saying interwebs. That's my favorite saying. All right, let's see. All right, so this is Nancy Guthrie. Case thinks that he knows why mom was targeted. Warns suspect could strike again. But look, this is a clip here that resurfaced from 2013 showing the inside of her home. And so if somebody said, oh, I know there's a bookshelf and I know that there's a nightstand next to her bed and a painting above her bed right next to a window that opens up in a certain manner. A lot of people can come up with a bunch of things. Not all the DNA has been processed. How is everyone cleared? The FBI hasn't cleared anyone, only Nanos. And we know that he has reversed himself or had to walk things back. Yeah, but I mean, at this point, 40 something days later, it doesn't take that long once you have your suspect. I mean, anybody in law enforcement will tell you that. I've worked numerous cases, even like I said, the Brian Koberger case, which didn't have as many FBI agents on it, and they had a amount of FBI agents on it. But a lot of the amount of work that is going into the Guthrie case, just because of, let's face it, the president asked, put his 2 words into it and had the FBI and even Kash Patel, get involved into this case. So this isn't something that is, your local FBI agent, just kind of walking around. This is an entire, come on. I don't think so. I think if we think that, I strongly suspect this isn't somebody who's close. No way. Just like I said it in the Brian Koberger case. No way. No way. Let's see. Steve says motive can be a descriptor of the offender's personality, and we have an offender who kidnapped, transported, hidden a victim, and maintained his normal daily habits without raising suspicion and involvement. Doesn't that sound kind of like the whole narcissist, type of person? Maybe a loner, works from home, possibly, works alone, maybe, those type of things. And so, a few things. Good point there, Steve. Good point. Wasn't there a spike in searches for the Nancy Guthrie leading up to the abduction? I think there could have been. I'm not too sold on like Google Trends and stuff like that. In the Brian Koberger case, people try to determine whether or not Papa Rogers was Brian Koberger and where searches were coming from for Papa Roger at what location and when the 1122 King Road residence was searched on Google Trends, and that thing was inaccurate to the max. Plus, in order for it to hit Google Trends, I think it would have taken I think it's at like an estimated like 100 something, like a lot. And so I don't know if Google Trends is is very accurate. Now I do know that the analytics, like on YouTube videos, like for instance in the Tepe case, where that video of her, and for those that aren't aware, the Tepe case is the dentist in Ohio who him and his wife were killed by his wife's ex-husband, who traveled an extreme long distance and did a lot of things to try to cover his tracks too. You know, used a silencer, left his phone at work, etc. But once they got his information and they got his name, and they had, like, he had to leave, he had to travel from one area to another. Again, another scenario where you have an intelligent person, a doctor, who as soon as they got wind, got him under radar, arrested him within 12 days. You get what I'm saying? So these inner circle people, they don't typically get away for this very long period of time. Now, are there some cases? Yeah, there are. But if you're counting on the exception and not the rule, then you're going to be wrong 99% of the time. Because if you're looking at the 1% of the time when somebody who's close, who investigators are close on, but just can't build a case on yet, those are very few and far in between. Now, I get it. There, some people say, hey, well, the murder rate and this and that. And yeah, but that's also people who, you have a lot of, like, where they don't have any idea who the person is. My thing is, like, when you get your suspect, and again, also time has a huge role, right? So if you have your suspect 20 years or 10 years after the crime has occurred, there's a lot of evidence that has been lost or that could have been found that is no longer available, versus when you are looking for evidence against somebody right away. All right. And so that makes a little bit of a difference. But if in this investigation here, it's 40 days in, there's still there would be a lot of evidence to go through to determine whether or not somebody was involved in this case, in my opinion. Let's see. All right, let's continue this. And like I said, I mean, I could be wrong. It could be somebody close. I don't see it. I don't see it whatsoever in this case. This reminds me too much of going this long. And like I said early on, I was like, hey, if it is somebody close, they'll probably get arrested within 14 to 18 days. We're over double that. We're over double that. And so unless law enforcement just is that inept, which I strongly doubt, because it's not just, Chief Nanos, it's also the FBI and some pretty higher ups there in the FBI. For this guy to continue to get away with this and not been arrested yet, that should say a lot. That should say a lot. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Brian Koberger took him extra amount of months, but that's because that's how long it took for the DNA to get back. They had nothing until that point. Once they got his name, they were able to figure out a lot about him. And that's what I'm trying to say. Once you got a name, once you have a suspect, you can figure out a lot about the guy. He has to be reclusive. How many of us could do everything which occurred in this crime and keep all indicators from our orbit of friends and coworkers? I 100% agree with that. Definitely is. He's a loner. Probably works by himself or at home. I would reckon that he's probably living on his own. I do not think that this is a person who is around a lot of people. The Arizona sheriff in charge of Nancy Guthrie investigation revealed that he believes he knows why the 84-year-old was targeted, while warning that the suspect absolutely could strike again. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has also faced criticism over fruitless month-long search for Guthrie, gave the update while refusing to divulge details, even as he suggested others are not safe. We believe we would know why he did this. We believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so I think what he's trying to say is, like, is they kind of like, and I hate to keep using the Brian Koberger case, but kind of in the Brian Koberger case where they believe that that scenario was a targeted scenario. They just didn't know how it was targeted or why it was targeted. And I think that's what he means in this point. They're not sure how or why she was targeted, but they feel that she was targeted. Now, what gives them that kind of information or that kind of thought? Well, one, the fact that the guy may have taken some medicine to keep her alive. I mean, it's not like unless he's like, I'm going to take you, you know, what do you need to survive? And she's like, oh, I need this medicine. I don't feel like that's the way that goes down. You know what I mean? Especially when you have like blood outside in the front. That sounds like something got combative, right? And so let's see. But they think that they know exactly what the motive is. And like I said, if he had a jammer on and he's visible in the front of the house, he wanted to be seen. And I've been saying this for a while. Guys. And if I was right about that, I'm probably right about a lot of other things, just saying that out there right now, about it not being an inside job or somebody close and things of that nature. But I've been saying he wanted to be seen. He wanted to strike fear. But I think he actually wanted, I mean, if he had a jammer, if he wanted to just strike fear into Nancy and he just wanted her to see him and the gun and everything else, and he had a jammer, why not be using it in the front? The thing is, I think he wanted us, everybody watching, and especially, I think he wanted Savannah to see him. I think that may be, you know, his source of obsession, so to speak. But that's probably just speculation. I mean, I don't think anybody can prove that at this point without finding, you know, out this guy right now. Once he's located and they can look through his phone and they can look through his internet searches and all that other stuff, and they find out that he is not just stalking Nancy, but maybe even Savannah and, you know, all these other things, and then that's probably going to build up more clues. But at this point, and this is probably why Chief Nanos says he can't say with 100% certainty, is that may be where they're thinking this is. Do I think he'll strike again? If this was a fantasy-driven crime, I definitely do. You know, guys that commit this type of crime don't just stop. And, you know, now what kind of target or who he's going to be aiming for next could be completely different than what Nancy Guthrie is, because I think if his sole obsession was more so like Savannah, I mean, if I was Savannah, I'd have like, you know, security detail, because I wouldn't be surprised if this guy, if this is somebody who's that obsessive with her, that couldn't get to her, that got to her mom so that he could get her attention, so to speak. You know, even if it's not like without the mask, etc. But if that was, you know, somewhat of the motive here, you know, if he's that crazy and he did something like that, then he's going to want to feel it again. Now, is he going to target another family member of Savannah's? I doubt it. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, he targets somebody else. I mean, even in the Brian Koberger case, he had pictures of other students, classmates of his own, classmates of the victims whose lives he took. You know, he was searching for a K-bar knife up until the point that the bolo came out. Ain't that something, right? Everybody says, oh, he's searching for a K-bar knife because he's trying to replace the knife. I don't think so. You know, trying to replace the knife in case law enforcement come knocking and asking. Well, if that was the case, don't you think you would have worked harder once the bolo came out, because they might come knocking sooner than later? Instead, he panics, gets into a fight with his professor, in my opinion, probably planned, loses his job, and then has his daddy fly across country so he can take the car outside of the area, so that way he doesn't leave the area with the car behind and it be found. Right. And so why doesn't he search for a K-bar knife after that? Why does he stop when the bolo comes out? My opinion is because It's not because he's replacing it in case somebody comes knocking looking for the K-bar knife that he purchased off of Amazon. My opinion is because he's trying to commit the crime again. And he got stopped before that. If his intention was to keep her alive, then why no proof of life? I never said that the person asking for the ransom was the person that took her. And second of all, I didn't say that he took her to prove that he was alive later. This could be a very sick man with a very sick fantasy of just keeping her locked up, not intentionally sharing what he's doing to the world. You know, whether that be, you know, hey, I got her alive or anything like that. I mean, what's the point of doing that? Right. Now, if this was the, you know, the abduction for ransom and they contacted TMZ, which I highly doubt, I 100% don't believe, but let's just say that was the case, then yeah, why no proof of life? Well, there was some blood outside of the house too. Who's to say that Nancy Guthrie, just because he took the medicine doesn't mean that she survived, you know, the entire ordeal, including the trip to the destination in which, you know, that he had planned to go to after the fact. She was bleeding pretty heavily. So maybe there's no proof of life because she's not alive. And she didn't survive she was elderly and had mobility issues. Apparently was bleeding, in my opinion, was bleeding close to the ground. I just don't think so. Do you think the sheriff should keep the interviews or stop talking until he has something more important? Ooh, good question there, Sirius. I don't know. I think that if he's going to continue to do interviews, that he should probably say something a little bit more concrete. If he has information in which he does and says he does, it's not good. And he doesn't do anything with it. It's not a good look. I think he should keep his mouth shut about those things unless he has something that he's got concrete. I mean, you know, I don't think there would be anything wrong with him saying something to the effect, hey, it's just a matter of time. We have some information. But the actions also don't speak highly for confidence wise, because, you know, they've downsized the task force, etc. You know, the movement that the stuff that they've done has led me to believe more so than that they don't know much more than they've known for a while and are in a place where they can't move, to be honest with you. That's kind of where I'm at. Let's see. I agree, Steelers fan. I feel bad for the family as well. You guys have any questions? Put them in the comment section. I think this is all well, you know what? I have a couple of things. So this is Nancy Guthrie, new info tonight on Nancy Guthrie's recent video. In the last 24 hours, the FBI has allegedly returned to and interrogated workers of a Mexican restaurant. Savannah and Nancy were featured on the Today Show. That's the case. They're really grasping at straws. if they're just visiting places that she appeared on the Today Show, and that's the only reason why they're visiting that place is because she appeared there, I would assume that they would have gone through her financial records and seen that she had been there X amount of times in recent days or months or whatever the case may be, and would have seen. I don't know. If I was investigating this and I saw, her attending a certain place over and over again, I would definitely want to go and interview the folks there and people who had interactions with her 100%. And if that's the case here, I think they're a little late on doing it, but hey, better late than never, right? And then here's this I wanted to read. So sheriff makes another crucial error in Nancy Guthrie complicated disappearance case. Expert. Now, I've not read this at all, so I have no idea what this is about. So Sheriff Chris Nanos made another critical mistake in the Nancy Guthrie's complicated disappearance, an expert believes. On Thursday, Nanos revealed that his theory on why Guthrie was targeted and warned the Tucson, Arizona community that the abductor could strike again but wouldn't share any further information. Former FBI agent Jason Pack told Page 6, the official's remarks, from my experience as a crisis communications practitioner, where it gets complicated is when in the same interview, he suggests a suspect could strike again. Once he put that out there, every person watching wants to know who's at risk and why they ought to, and what they ought to do about it. I agree. If you can't answer those questions, you probably shouldn't lead with that statement. That's just kind of what I said too. A warning about context doesn't necessarily protect people. It worries them. And it sits a little uneasy alongside the targeted attack framing he's also offered. But, this is a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Because Chief Fry said, hey, this is a targeted event. Everybody should be fine. And people like castrated him for that too, right? So law enforcement can't win no matter what happens, right? And so let's see. Pack explained that the case is this magnitude, the sheriff's office and the FBI work together, with the latter bringing resources to the table that no county sheriff's office can match on its own. When the public messaging is coordinated and coming from one unified voice, it tells you the joint investigation is firing on all cylinders. When statements get out ahead of that coordination, it raises concerns about where the seams are. And there's a lot of concerns here, in my opinion, with Nanos and the FBI. And I'm just, me personally, I just hope it's more so that he's just bad on camera, bad in interviews, because that's not his profession. And maybe perhaps he's trying to reveal information or where they are in the case to kind of maybe alleviate some things, and just isn't doing a good job of it. Alleviate maybe some thoughts or speculation. And I think all he's done is increase that to a certain extent. I hope those seams are tighter behind closed doors than they appear from the outside. That's just what I said. I just think a little more discipline at the podium would serve everyone better as this moves forward. He defended Nanos not revealing the motive. When the sheriff says investigators believe they know the motive but won't share it, there's an investigative reason. This is it. You don't hand the suspect a roadmap of what you know. You have a quarrel with that. So, yeah, I agree with him. I agree with him on that point. You don't add him. But I don't know if he should come out and, I don't know. Like I said, I think maybe perhaps he's trying to inform the public of something without informing the public of something. Get what I'm saying? Despite Nanos' statement, Pack acknowledged the high-profile investigation is one of the hardest things a law enforcement leader can face. Nobody gets everything right under the kind of sustained pressure, and I respect the weight he's carrying. I do too, 100%. 100%. Pack's hope is that Guthrie's grieving family, including daughters Savannah and Annie and son Cameron, as a dedicated point of contact inside the investigation who is keeping them informed and walking alongside them through every development. I hope so too, because I know in the Koberger case with the Gonsalves family, they didn't have that, and it almost became a situation where the family felt like they were alienated again, from law enforcement, and it almost felt like law enforcement was purposefully withholding information from them. He urged others not to think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, it's safe for everyone else. He continued that while authorities believe Savannah Guthrie's mom was targeted, they are not 100% sure of that. The sheriff added, "We believe we know why he did this, but we will not elaborate further." I wonder if he left something else, because I've often said that, and Steve is the first one actually from True Crime to have brought it up, that he thought the flowers was maybe a possibility of a message. And that kind of got my mind thinking, all right, man, this guy has the gun right in front of his crotch. He's got the shirt tucked behind it. He's possibly got a jammer, but he's being seen on camera. Maybe there is something to this message. Maybe there is some, and that's what started getting the gears going there. Maybe he left something inside. Maybe there was another message that we don't know about. He continued, while that authorities believe, okay, the sheriff added, "We believe we know why he did this, but not elaborate further." Page 6 reported authorities missed a simple strategy that could have been used to catch the kidnapper. Let's see what Page 6, this simple strategy was. Let's see. Bezel Ethan Raviv the CEO and founder of Lionsgate Network, a crypto recovery service with expertise in blockchain forensics, told Page Six that authorities should have deposited a small balance in the alleged ransom. Yeah, but that's assuming that the alleged ransomer was the kidnapper. I have it on good authority. You know, when I used to be in law enforcement, guys, 12 degrees of separation for everybody. You know somebody, you know somebody, you know somebody. I have on good authority that law enforcement, since very early on, did not believe that the ransom was anything more than somebody trying to take advantage of the situation. Okay. And so did they try to, you know, put into money and do all this other stuff? They did eventually. And I think it was because TMZ just kept putting out all this crap out there. And you know, at the end of the day, it was creating more speculation and stuff like that. So law enforcement had to act, obviously. All right. A ransom note at the start of the investigation demanded $6 million in Bitcoin sent to an address and a chain. Guthrie's released by 2 different deadlines, both which came and went. But you see, that's the problem, right? Like, apparently there was a guy that was arrested who was able to reach out and contact, you know, Savannah Guthrie and her family. That's why law enforcement were at her house. A lot of these individuals that were thinking that the family had something to do with it were reporting, oh, law enforcement are back at the Guthrie residence at Anna Guthrie's house. They must be getting ready to arrest somebody. They must be getting ready to do something. And they were all completely wrong. They had gotten some asshole had texted them saying that they had information, wanting the Bitcoin and all this other stuff. He ended up getting arrested for it, right? But now this guy was able to go and get Savannah Guthrie's information from the web, and yet this person who's requesting $6 million in Bitcoin couldn't figure that out and had to go to TMZ and all this other place, right? Now, if you think about it, you know, a ransom for, you know, in this scenario, you're not going to go to the media because that's already creating a spectacle. So usually when there's a situation like this, law enforcement is typically requested not to be involved by the abductors. But going to the media, you're throwing out the neon lights and the banner and a band saying, hey, law enforcement, investigate this, instead of contacting Savannah Guthrie and say, hey, we have your mom. Right. In fact, they're not the ones that contacted anybody for 3 days. They waited 3 days. Like I said, you know how much information I can find about you in 3 days? I guarantee you, if I had your name and if you were as famous as Nancy Guthrie and you could find her name and date of birth, the amount of information that person can find about you, especially somebody who's been on the interwebs, who's been on YouTube's, who's been on media, mainstream media, insider, had cameras inside of her house. It's not going to be very difficult to come up with things that make an appearance that you may know something that only the killer may know or the abductor may know. It wouldn't be very difficult, in my opinion. Let's see. Steve says, Zodiac, BTK, Unabomber all wanted the world to know, and I agree with Daniel. Nanos also agrees by stating targeted could strike again, public not safe equals Ellie wouldn't be surprised by another victim. 100% agree. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And he's a professional as well. He's a former CSI investigator. Let's see. Daily Mail also reported the department failed to immediately launch a high-tech Sienna aircraft at the start of the search for the Today Show co-host's mother, as they waited hours after she reportedly missing to utilize a high-resolution thermal imaging cameras. She went missing like at 2 a.m. They found out at noon. And he's saying, oh, they didn't act fast enough to get the thermal out there. It's not gonna, I mean, this is more just, in my opinion, nitpicking at law enforcement just because of the result. They haven't arrested somebody. I don't know. I'm not liking the, you know, I've been very critical of the sheriff tonight, and I will be, and I'll continue to be. But this kind of stuff here isn't. This is weak. Guthrie was reported missing on February 1st. The sheriff said at the time that he and investigators believe Guthrie was abducted in her sleep and harmed in the process. Well, there was some blood outside, so yeah. February 10th, photos and videos were released of a masked individual breaking into the Guthrie home wearing gloves and a backpack. A number of people have been questioned over the course of the investigation, after the photos and videos were released. However, authorities have no arrests in connection with the kidnapping. Investigators remain ongoing. I don't know, guys. I'm telling you guys, I do think that law enforcement know more, but I do think. Do I think she's near her house? No, I do not. I do not think she's near her house. How brazen could he be? The same neighborhood or similar one, another semi-known star or family member. I don't know. You know, I think that if he were to strike again, he's probably looking at the success that he had, and he's probably going to try to duplicate it. I wouldn't be surprised if he would target somebody else that he felt was an easy target, that had a connection to somebody of celebrity status, similar to this scenario. You know, he's probably getting off on the amount of attention that this case is getting, and probably would like to duplicate that by creating another high-profile crime, ensuring that he's on camera or whatever message that he left behind is still there. You know, and if he committed a crime against somebody of less known status or stature, I wouldn't be surprised if something was left to identify or make a connection. Because I think, again, if he had a jammer and he was able to jam his movements around the house, then he must have wanted to be seen by the front doorbell camera, which is what I've been saying. And it's not like he thought that, or maybe he forgot to turn it on, right? Maybe somebody might say, well, maybe he meant to turn it on and jam it, but he forgot, you know, everything, you know, the pressure of the moment, actually going through it versus practicing it. You know, could he have forgotten? Brian Koberger forgot a knife sheath. Could he have forgotten to turn it on at the early part? Yeah, true. Except if he thought he had it on, the way he walks up to that door and ducks his head, checks the light, puts his hand in front of the camera. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that's to be the case. I think he knew it was off. As of today, they have some new information about the camera. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The new information on the cameras is that the cameras in the backyard that face the side of the house, the pool, and the back part of the home captured movement before her abduction and after, but nothing during. And I'm assuming that that's an issue because I think that they believe he may have made entry through the backyard or entered the backyard, which is why I believe that the backpack or the image of him without the backpack is the same night. And maybe perhaps the backpack's in the backyard still. You know, if he had to jump a fence or whatever, maybe he's going back and forth trying to figure out some stuff. I was thinking if Nano said that he believes he'll strike again, but yet gives us no info to the public, maybe something would tip the guy or guys off. Just a thought. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, could he be? I don't know. Maybe they do have somebody in mind and they want to see what that kind of response would bring out of him. Maybe. Do you think he had done something like this before? Maybe not someone famous, but just for a thrill. I think he most definitely entered somebody else's house. I definitely most think that he's most likely been a peeping Tom at the very least. I wouldn't be surprised if he's entered somebody's house while they were there. Now, could he have, kidnapped somebody else? There's a possibility. I mean, if he jammed, because I mean, you would want to look for like missing persons because the blood. I'm assuming the blood outside of the house occurred there. That situation happened there. I don't know if there's blood inside of the house, but if there isn't any blood, that tells me that obviously something happened as they exited the house. And what is the most logical explanation of what possibly could have happened and that resulted in her bleeding? She probably yelled for help. You know, you're not going to yell for help inside of the house. She may have cooperated up until the point where she exited and he struck her, you know, and she fell to the ground to silence her. And so she definitely, you know, something happened there, but does that necessarily mean that that's happened in other crimes he may have committed? There's a good possibility if he had the jammer with him that he could have jammed a network. Let's just say this wasn't anybody famous. The only thing that we would know is that somebody went missing without a direction to travel or anything else, and that maybe there was some weird stuff that was happening with their camera system in the middle of the night, but not knowing exactly when they went missing. So we know that Miss Guthrie went missing. You know, they reported her missing at noon the following day. But if he committed this crime against somebody who's not getting checked up on as often, you know, especially if it's an elderly person that's maybe not too elderly, but like, you know, up there in age and doesn't have maybe constant communication with their family. I would think that most people do. But if they didn't, and he targeted somebody else who didn't have constant communication, this could look like just a disappearance, right? If there wasn't any blood at the front entrance, all we would know is that, and let's just say if the cameras didn't work, and we would know that, well, one, there's a camera missing. That'd be kind of huge, right? And maybe some of the plants on the floor. But, you know, to lead somebody to believe to some sort of, foul play, right? And maybe that's why he took the camera. Maybe he wanted to be seen. Maybe that was the first time he did that, right? Maybe it was the first time he allowed himself to be seen. And then he had second thoughts, and that's why he took the camera. He's like, you know what, I don't want, maybe somebody's going to recognize me or whatever the case may be. And that's why he took the camera. But if he had done it before and he had jammed, you know, audio, video, and everything else, and nobody just, I would assume you're looking for a missing person more so than anything else, right? Somebody who'd left their house without taking their wearable devices or phone or anything that would track them. Good question. Thank you. What is the difference between a kidnapping and an abduction? It's been called both. Kidnapping is usually a child. Abduction is by force, taking somebody by force, but it's all the same thing. But yeah, usually kidnapping is directed towards a child. All right, I think I'm at the end. What do we tell people about letting them take you to a second location, never coming back, fight like hell? And that may have been what happened. You know, she may have realized that that she needed to fight back, and that could have been the reason why there's blood in the front. Maybe that's the reason why he had to take her. If this was something else, like a robbery or burglary gone wrong, which I don't think so. I mean, the biggest clue, and this will be the last point I make, the biggest clue to that is the medication, him going back. Something doesn't happen in the moment, and you have to take somebody. I mean, the amount of stress, the amount of like that's going off script, that's going beyond game plan, that you're now having to take somebody and then have the thought, all right, well, you know, I'm going to keep her alive for a few days, so let me go back in and take some medicine for her. I don't think so. I think that's part of the plan. That's part of the checklist to keep her alive. Why does he want to keep her alive? It could have been a ransom at one point. Maybe she just didn't survive the abduction, you know, to the second location. Or it could have been for more nefarious, fantasy-driven means. You guys let me know in the comment section. I'll be back on probably Sunday, guys. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. If anything else drops in this case, we're going to be talking about it more. I'll still continue to talk about the Guthrie case, and as more information comes out. If you guys think I'm completely wrong, let me know what part of what I'm wrong is about. I'm more than happy to explore those things with you guys. I'm not the type of person that if you have a difference of opinion that I'm gonna get what's the word I'm looking for, offended by somebody having a difference of opinion. All I ask is that you be respectful, and you'll see a respectful Daniel in return. I like to mirror. If you come in at me pretty harsh, I've been known to crack back. So with that being said, guys, I'll see you guys in a couple of days, if not tomorrow. Keeping it classy. Yes, 100%. See you guys later. Peace out, y'all. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, hype the video. You know what to do. Bye.